The wind cut through the empty streets, but Nadia didn't notice until she saw him, a little boy, shivering and half asleep in the snow, his eyes wide with fear. She quickly wrapped her coat around him, lifted him from the cold ground, and brought him inside. She fed him warm soup, tucked him into blankets, whispered soft words, not knowing that this small child was actually the lost son of Gwon, one of the most dangerous Korean mafia bosses alive. A few hours later, 3 men in dark coats arrived, their hands hidden, demanding the boy back, but he wouldn't let go of her. When Gwon finally appeared, the air around him colder than the snow outside, he did something no one expected. He quietly handed Nadia a card, asking her to come to his penthouse. She thought it would be just a short visit. What she didn't know was that the boy's grief and his father's obsession were about to pull her into a world she could never leave. If that opening made your heart skip a beat, you're exactly where you need to be. This channel is home to stories like these, stories of courage, loyalty, and secrets so dangerous they could change everything. Hit that subscribe button right now so you don't lose this video. Now let's get back into the story. Nadia almost walked past him. Almost. He was tucked against the brownstone steps like a piece of trash the wind had blown there. Small, still, his lips were turning blue. She stopped. Every other person on that street kept walking, heads down, coats pulled tight. Nobody wanted the cold, nobody had time. But Nadia's feet wouldn't move forward. She dropped her groceries right there on the icy sidewalk. "Hey," she knelt down. "Hey, can you hear me?" The boy didn't answer. His eyes were open but glassy, like he was looking at something nobody else could see. His little hands were curled in his lap, red and stiff from the cold. His coat, if you could even call it that, was soaked through. Nadia pulled off her own coat without thinking. She wrapped it around him. He flinched. That tiny flinch told her everything. He was still alive, still fighting, just barely. She lifted him. He weighed almost nothing, and that broke something in her chest. She carried him 6 blocks through the snow. Her arms burned. Her boots slipped twice on the ice. She didn't stop. She didn't look back. She just kept moving, this strangest child pressed against her chest, his cold cheek resting on her shoulder. By the time she reached her apartment building, she was shaking, not from cold, but from fear. What if she hadn't looked down? What if she was 30 seconds faster? She laid him on her couch. Blankets, hot water, soup on the stove. She worked fast, quiet, focused. Her hands didn't shake anymore. She had a job to do. When the soup was ready, she brought it over. He was watching her now, really watching her. Those dark eyes followed every move she made, sharp and careful, like a child who had learned very early that trust was something you earned, not given. She held out the spoon. He stared at it. Then slowly, so slowly, he opened his mouth. She almost cried right there. They sat in silence while the snow fell outside. No names yet, no explanations, just a woman and a boy and a bowl of soup in a warm apartment while the city froze outside. She thought he was just a lost kid. She thought this was just one of those nights where you do the right thing and move on. She had no idea. She had no idea that the boy sitting on her couch eating her soup had a father whose name made grown men go quiet in rooms, a father who, at that very moment, had half of New York turning over every stone for his son. And not one of those men, not one, had thought to check the warm apartment of a woman who almost walked past. Almost.
The boy wouldn't sleep. It was past midnight. The heat was on. The blankets were thick, but his eyes stayed open, fixed on the door like he was waiting for something to come through it. Nadia noticed. She didn't say anything. She just moved her chair closer to the couch and sat there with him. No phone, no TV, just presence. That was enough to make him blink. "My name is Min Jae," he said, so quiet she almost missed it. She smiled. "I'm Nadia." He nodded slowly, like he was filing that away somewhere safe. She didn't ask where he came from. She didn't ask where his parents were. Every time she got close to those questions, something in his face would shut down, a tiny wall going up behind his eyes. So she stopped asking and just kept him warm. She made cocoa. When she handed it to him, his fingers wrapped around the mug so tight, like he was afraid someone would take it, like warmth was something that had been taken from him before. That detail stayed with her. Hours passed. The storm outside got worse. Snow hit the windows in waves, and the old building creaked and groaned around them. Min-jae tracked every sound. A pipe knocked in the wall. His eyes snapped to it. A car horn from the street. His whole body tensed. This was not a child who had simply gotten lost. This was a child who had learned to survive. Around 2 in the morning, exhaustion finally pulled him under. His head drooped, his grip on the mug loosened. Nadia caught it before it fell, set it on the table, and pulled the blanket up to his chin. She stood there looking at him for a long moment. "Who are you?" she thought, because something wasn't adding up. The way he spoke, careful, measured, choosing every word, the way he watched exits, the faint mark on his wrist that looked old, like a scar from something she didn't want to imagine. He was 7, maybe 8 years old, and he carried himself like someone who had already lived a hard life. She went to the window and looked out at the street below. Empty, white, silent. But then a black car, parked across the street, engine off, no one getting in or out, just sitting there in the snow, dark windows, watching. Nadia's stomach dropped. She stepped back from the window fast. Her heart was hammering now. She looked at the boy sleeping on her couch, then back at the street. The car hadn't moved. She told herself she was being paranoid. She told herself it was nothing. But at 2:47 in the morning, someone knocked on her door. 3 times, slow, deliberate, like they already knew she was awake. She didn't open the door. Not yet. Her hand hovered over the handle while her heart slammed against her ribs. 3 knocks. That was it. No voice. No hello. No, is anyone home? Just 3 slow, deliberate knocks from someone who clearly wasn't in a hurry, because they knew she wasn't going anywhere. "Who is it?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Silence. Then, "We're here for the child." Her blood went cold. Not, "Is there a child there?" Not, "We're looking for a little boy." They said, "the child," like they already knew, like they had known this whole time exactly where he was. She spun around. Min-jae was awake. He was sitting straight up on the couch, blanket pooled around his waist, eyes locked on the door. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't crying. He was completely, terrifyingly calm. That scared her more than the knock. "Don't open it," he whispered. She turned back to the door. "He's sick. He needs rest. You can't take him out in this storm." A pause. Then the voice again, flatter this time. "Step aside, ma'am." Nadia did not step aside. She pressed her back against the door instead, both hands flat on the wood behind her. She didn't have a plan, she didn't have a weapon, she had nothing except the fact that there was a child on the other side of her, and she was not moving. The door pushed. She pushed back. For 10 seconds nobody spoke. The storm howled outside, the building creaked. And then Min-jae crossed the room, walked right up to her and wrapped both arms around her waist from behind. His face pressed into her back, his small fists curled into her sweater. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The door stopped pushing. Footsteps. Murmuring. Then quiet. Nadia stood there shaking, the boy's arms still locked around her, neither of them moving for a long time. Then she heard it. A different set of footsteps. Heavier. Slower. Unhurried. The kind of footsteps that belonged to someone who had never once been told no and didn't expect tonight to be any different. The knock this time was softer. Just one. Then a voice that made everything in the hallway go quiet. Deep. Controlled.
the kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to fill a room. "Miss Nadia." A pause. "I believe you have something of mine." The air left her lungs. She looked down at the boy still holding on to her. Min-jae slowly lifted his face. His eyes met hers, and in them for just a second she saw something that shattered her completely. Not fear. Guilt. Like he had known all along exactly who was coming.
The elevator doors opened, and Nadia forgot how to breathe. Floor-to-ceiling windows, the entire Manhattan skyline stretched out like something from a movie. Snow falling silently against the glass, lights from 1,000 buildings bleeding into the dark sky. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen, and the coldest room she had ever stood in. Not the temperature, the feeling. Everything in that penthouse was perfect, polished, and completely without warmth, like a museum that happened to have furniture, like a place where people conducted business and called it living. Guan stood at the center of it all. He didn't come to greet them. He waited, still, patient, the kind of man who had decided long ago that the world moved toward him, not the other way around. His eyes went straight to Min-jae. Something crossed his face, gone in half a second, but Nadia caught it, a flash of raw relief that a man like Guan would never let anyone see twice. He composed himself so fast it was almost frightening. "Leave us," he said to the guards behind them. The room emptied in seconds. Guan looked at Nadia for the first time, really looked, like he was reading a file on her face, her background, her intentions, her weak points. She held his gaze, because looking away felt like losing something important. "You saved him," he said. "He needed help," she replied. "Many people saw him tonight. You were the only one who stopped." She didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. He walked slowly to a cabinet, poured 2 glasses of water, and placed one in front of her, not as hospitality, as an observation. He was watching how she moved, how she stood, whether her hands shook. They didn't. Min-jae had drifted to the window, pressing one small hand against the cold glass, staring down the city below like he was searching for something he'd lost down there. Her chest ached. Guan set down his glass and turned to face her fully. "He wants to offer you a position, close to my son." His eyes didn't blink. "But I need to know one thing first." He stepped closer. "Who told you where to find him?" Guan's question hung in the air like smoke. "Who told you where to find him?" Nadia stared at him. "Nobody told me anything. I was walking home from work. I saw a child freezing in the snow. I stopped." His eyes didn't move, didn't blink. He was measuring every syllable she produced, weighing it, looking for the crack where the lie lived. There was no crack, because it wasn't a lie. "You just stopped," he repeated slowly. "Yes." A long silence, the kind that had weight. Then something shifted in his face. Not a smile, not warmth, just the faintest loosening, like a locked door that had been tried 1,000 times, finally giving a millimeter. He believed her. He didn't say it. Men like Guan didn't say things like that. But he stepped back, and the tension in the room dropped just enough to breathe. That night, he sent them home. A car, 2 guards, no conversation. Min-jae fell asleep against Nadia's shoulder before they hit the first stoplight, his paper crane still clutched in one fist. The next morning, her apartment felt different, smaller, quieter, like the penthouse had recalibrated something in her that couldn't go back. Min-jae was up before her, sitting cross-legged on the floor, folding paper. She watched him from the doorway, this small, serious boy, crease by crease, building something delicate out of nothing. She made coffee, set a plate of toast on the table. "Why cranes?" she finally asked. He didn't look up.
They bring luck. A pause. My mom used to make them when things got bad. She said if you believe hard enough, they carry your wish somewhere it can actually happen. Nadia sat down across from him. What do you wish for? He looked up then. His eyes were so steady for a child his age it was almost unbearable. That someone would stay, he said simply. Everyone always leaves. She didn't respond right away. She couldn't. The words hit a place in her chest she hadn't opened in years. Her own losses, her own empty apartment, the quiet that had become so normal she'd stopped noticing it. She picked up a square of paper. "Show me how," she said. His whole face changed. Not a big change, just a softening at the corners of his mouth, a small light behind his eyes. He slid closer and placed the paper in her hands, then guided her fingers through the first fold. They spent the whole morning like that, folding, quiet, warm. By noon, 12 cranes lined the windowsill. By afternoon, Nadia's phone buzzed. A message from a number she didn't recognize. No name, no greeting, just 7 words that made the hair on her arms stand up. "You're being watched. Don't go outside today."
The tail had been on them for 3 blocks before Nadia noticed. Same black coat, same steady pace, matching their speed exactly. Not too close, not too far. Every time she slowed, he slowed. Every time she turned, he turned. Min Jae had spotted him first. He hadn't said anything. He had just squeezed her hand twice, quick and firm. She understood immediately. That scared her more than anything, that a child this small had a signal system for being followed. She steered them into a corner deli, moving casual like they had planned it. She grabbed a basket, tossed in bread she didn't need, and watched the door through the refrigerator glass. The man in the black coat stopped outside, lit a cigarette, didn't look in. Didn't have to. Min Jae stood beside her, eyes forward, voice barely a breath. "He's been outside your building since last night." Her stomach dropped. "You knew?" "He always knows," he said quietly. They stayed in that deli 11 minutes. When they left, the man was gone, but gone didn't mean safe. Gone just meant she couldn't see him anymore. Nadia kept her pace even, her face calm, while everything inside her was running. Back at the apartment, Min Jae went straight to the window, checked the street below, then sat down and started folding paper cranes like nothing had happened, like surveillance was just a normal part of a Tuesday morning. Nadia watched him and felt something shift inside her chest. This boy had never had a childhood, not a real one, not the kind with scraped knees and cartoon shows and complaining about homework. He had grown up reading rooms, reading people, reading danger. And somehow, through all of that, he had ended up on her couch, folding paper cranes and drinking cocoa. She sat across from him. "Min Jae." He looked up. "Why were you out in that snow alone?" He held her gaze for a long moment. His fingers kept folding, the paper moving out of habit more than thought. Then he set the crane down carefully, like it was something fragile. "I wanted to see," he said, "if someone would stop." The room went quiet. If someone would just stop and help me without knowing who I was. Nadia's throat tightened. She understood now. He hadn't gotten lost. He had chosen that stoop. He had chosen that street. He had sat in the freezing cold on purpose, waiting to see if one person, just one, would see a child and not a name. She had been the answer to a test she never knew she was taking. Before she could speak, her phone rang. Guan's number. She answered. His voice was low, controlled, but underneath it, something urgent she had never heard from him before. "Nadia, don't leave that apartment tonight." A pause. "Someone inside my organization knows about you." The window shattered at 11 p.m. Not the glass. A rock, wrapped in paper, punched straight through the lower pane and landed on Nadia's kitchen floor. Cold air poured in like water. Min-jae was off the couch before the sound even finished echoing, pressed flat against the interior wall, eyes locked on Nadia. Trained, automatic, like he had practiced this. She grabbed him and pulled him to the hallway, away from the windows. Her hands were shaking, but her legs were moving. She snatched her phone off the counter as she passed it. Guan picked up before the first ring finished. She said, "Someone just threw a rock through my window," she whispered. No pause, no question. "Get to the elevator, now. Don't use the stairs." "Min-jae?" "Bring him. Move." She grabbed her keys, grabbed the boy's hand, and they were in the hallway in seconds. The building was quiet around them, that specific late-night quiet that made every small sound enormous. The elevator felt too slow. The doors felt too thin. She kept her eyes on the stairwell door the entire ride up. The penthouse doors opened, and 4 guards were already positioned. Guan stood in the center of the room, jacket on, phone in hand, every trace of the controlled, unhurried man she had met before stripped away. He was operational now, focused. His eyes went to Min-jae first, head to toe, checking. Then to Nadia. "You're not hurt." It wasn't a question, but she shook her head anyway. He turned to the nearest guard and spoke in sharp, low Korean. The man nodded once and disappeared. Guan walked to the window and looked down at the street below, hands clasped behind his back. They did it to send a message, not to hurt you, not yet. Those 2 words sat in the room like something with weight. Min-jae had crossed to the window beside his father. He stood there, small next to Guan's tall frame, both of them looking down at the same street, same posture, hands behind their backs. Father and son, without a single word passing between them, reading the city below like a language only they spoke. It was the first time Nadia had seen them stand that close. It cracked something open in her chest. Guan spoke without turning around. "There is someone in my organization feeding information to a rival group. They used you to get to Min-jae, which means you are no longer safe in that apartment." Nadia steadied her breath. "So what happens now?" He turned from the window. His eyes were steady, unreadable, but behind them, something conflicted, something almost human. "Now," he said slowly, "I have to decide how much I trust you." Min-jae turned too, and he looked at his father with an expression that stopped Nadia cold. It wasn't hope. It was a warning. They found the informant at 3 a.m. Nadia heard the commotion from the guest room where she and Min-jae had been told to stay. Raised voices in Korean, rapid footsteps, a door slamming hard enough to shake the wall. Min-jae sat up straight on the bed, head tilted, listening with his whole body. "What's happening?" she whispered. "Someone got caught," he said flatly. Like it was nothing. Like men getting caught in the middle of the night in a penthouse was just a regular Tuesday. Nadia pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders and said nothing. 20 minutes later, Guan opened the door. His sleeves were rolled up. His expression was carved from stone. He looked at Min-jae first, then at Nadia, and whatever he saw in her face made him pull the door wider. "Come," he said. The main room had changed. 2 guards stood at opposite walls. A third was missing. On the glass table sat a phone, cracked screen, powered off, and a single photograph. Guan picked up the photo and held it out to Nadia. She took it. It was her, outside her building, taken 3 days ago, the morning after she had brought Min-jae home. She was carrying groceries. She looked completely ordinary. She looked like someone who had no idea she was being watched, because she hadn't. "One of my men has been passing information for 6 weeks, Guan said. "Your name, your address, your connection to my son." His jaw tightened. "They knew about you before I did." The photo felt heavy in her hand. "Who are they selling to?" she asked. "A group that has wanted leverage over me for a long time." He took the photo back. "You can't go back to that apartment. Not tonight, possibly for a while." A pause.
There is a room here, safe, secure. Nadia looked at Minjay beside her. The boy looked up at her. His eyes were steady, patient, waiting, like he already knew what she was going to say and had already decided it was the right answer. She looked back at Guan's reflection in the dark window glass. "There's something you're not telling me." His reflection didn't move. "There are many things I'm not telling you, but one of them cannot wait until morning." Guan put a folder on the table. He didn't open it. He just set it there between them, like something loaded, like a thing that once touched couldn't be untouched. Then he sat down across from Nadia and folded his hands and looked at her the way a man looks at someone he's about to change forever. "Open it," he said. She did. The first page was a photograph, a woman, Korean, beautiful, laughing at something off camera. She was standing in what looked like Central Park, snow on the ground, a paper crane held up in one hand like she was showing it to someone. Nadia's eyes moved to Minjay. He was staring at the photo, jaw tight, hands still, not breathing. "His mother," Guan said quietly. Nadia looked back at the photo, then at the next page. It was a report, medical. She didn't understand all of it, but she caught enough. Accident, blunt force, pronounced at scene. A date from 2 years ago. "She was killed," Guan said. "Not an accident. It was made to look like one." The room was completely silent. "The same people who had my man feeding them information." His voice stayed even, controlled, but his knuckles had gone white where his hands were folded. "They took her. And then 6 months later, they took Minjay. Held him for 11 days before he escaped." Nadia's head snapped up. "He escaped?" "On his own." Something shifted in Guan's expression. "He was 6 years old." She looked at the boy. 6 years old. Alone. Escaping from people who worked for a rival criminal organization. And then, a year later, choosing to sit in the snow on a random street in Manhattan to see if one stranger would stop. It all landed on her at once, and the weight of it was enormous. Minjay hadn't moved. His eyes were still on his mother's photograph. Nadia reached over slowly and covered his hand with hers. He didn't pull away. Guan watched that. Watched it like a man watching something he had wanted for 2 years and didn't know how to ask for. "There is a meeting in 4 days," Guan said, pulling the folder closed. "The group that killed her will be there. I have one chance to end this." He looked at Nadia directly. "But they know my face. They know every person connected to me." A pause. "Except you." The air shifted. Nadia felt it before she understood it. "No," she said. "I haven't asked anything yet. You were about to." Guan almost smiled. Almost. "I need someone to walk into a room without raising alarms. Someone they haven't seen before. Someone they would never suspect." His eyes held hers. "Someone who stopped for a child in the snow." Minjay's hand turned over under hers, and he held on, like he was asking her something his father didn't have the words for. Nadia said no 3 more times before morning. Each time, Guan didn't argue, didn't push, didn't raise his voice. He just waited, the way a man waits who has learned that patience is more powerful than pressure. And somehow that made it worse. She could fight anger. She didn't know what to do with quiet. By 5 a.m., she was sitting at the penthouse kitchen counter, both hands wrapped around a mug of coffee she hadn't touched, staring at nothing. Nadia appeared from the hallway. He was supposed to be asleep. He clearly hadn't been. He climbed onto the stool beside her, reached into his jacket pocket, and set something on the counter between them. A paper crane. Small, perfectly folded. He pushed it toward her with one finger, slow and deliberate, like an offering. She looked at it, then at him. "My mom used to say," he started, voice rough from no sleep, "that every crane holds one wish." He pulled his knees up onto the stool. "She made 1,000 of them when she got sick the first time. Said if you make enough, someone has to listen." Nadia's throat closed. "Did it work?" she asked, even though she already knew the answer. He shook his head. "But she kept making them anyway." He looked down at the crane. "She said the point wasn't the wish. The point was not giving up on the wish." The kitchen was quiet, except for the sound of the city waking up 40 floors below. Trucks, a distant siren, the first gray light of morning pressing against the windows. Nadia picked up the crane. It was lighter than she expected, lighter than everything it carried. "I'm scared," she said. She wasn't sure why she admitted it. Maybe because it was 5 a.m. Maybe because the boy beside her had just handed her something that cost him something real. "Me too," Minjae said. "Every day." She looked at him. "And you still get up?" He nodded once, matter of fact, like it had never occurred to him to do anything else. She set the crane down carefully and finally drank her coffee. Guan found them there 20 minutes later, side by side at the counter, not talking, watching the city get light. He stopped in the doorway. He didn't speak. He looked at his son, really looked, the way he probably hadn't allowed himself to in a long time, and something in his face broke open just slightly before he locked it back down. He walked to the counter, poured himself coffee, stood on the other side of Nadia. The three of them watched the sunrise in silence. Then Nadia set down her mug. "Tell me exactly what you need me to do," she said quietly. Guan looked at her. "And tell me what happens if it goes wrong." His pause was 1 second too long.
Guan's pause ended with 2 words. "You won't." That was it. No explanation, no guarantee, no details about backup plans or exit strategies or what happened to the last person who walked into a room for him. Just, "You won't." Like he was stating whether. Like failure wasn't a real option in his vocabulary, and he expected her to adopt that same policy starting now. Nadia stared at him. "That's not an answer," she said. "It's the only one I have." He set his coffee down. "I don't make promises I can't guarantee. I won't start with you." She respected that more than she wanted to. He spent the next hour explaining. No notes, no documents, everything verbal, everything measured, pausing to make sure she understood before moving to the next piece. The meeting was 4 days away. A private dinner on the Upper East Side, the kind of event where powerful people gathered under the cover of charity and shook hands with the same fingers they used to destroy things. She would go as a guest, a +1. Nobody there would know her face because she had no face in this world. That was her only protection and also her only weapon. Her job was simple. Find a man named Park. Sit near him. Listen. "That's it?" she asked. "That's it. Just listen?" "Just listen," Guan confirmed. "You don't approach him. You don't engage him. You are background. You are nobody. The moment you become somebody, you are in danger." She nodded slowly. "And you'll be there?" "No." The word hit flat and hard. "I cannot be in that building. My presence ends the evening before it starts." He looked at her steadily. "You will have an earpiece, 1 guard outside, and me on the other end of the line. 1 guard, an earpiece, and a man who couldn't come in." She almost laughed. She didn't. Minjae had been sitting at the far end of the counter this whole time, silent, pretending to fold a crane, but not actually folding it, just holding the paper, listening to every word. Guan glanced at Minjae. "Minjae, go get ready for breakfast." The boy didn't move. "She should know about Park," he said quietly. Guan's expression shifted. "Minjae, she should know what he did." His voice was small, but it didn't waver. Silence stretched between father and son. Nadia looked at Guan. He looked back at her, and for the first time since she met this man, she saw something she hadn't expected to find in a man like this. Deep, old, heavy shame. "Park," he said slowly, "is the man who ordered my wife's death." A breath,
He is also the man who held my son for 11 days. He stopped, and he is the reason I need someone he has never hurt to walk into that room.
Park was already at the event when Nadia arrived. She spotted him before anyone introduced them. A compact man in his 60s, silver-haired, laughing at something a younger man said, one hand resting on the younger man's shoulder like he owned him. Easy smile, warm eyes, the kind of face that made people feel immediately comfortable. That was the most dangerous thing about him. Nadia took a glass of water from a passing tray and moved to the edge of the room the way Guan had coached her. Back to the wall, full view of the space. Look like you're waiting for someone. Guan's voice came through the earpiece, low and steady. I see you. You're doing fine. Don't look at him again yet. She didn't. The room was everything she expected. Expensive clothes, louder laughter than anything was worth. The specific energy of people performing wealth for each other. A string quartet played in the corner, long tables draped in white, waiters moving like ghosts. She drifted closer to Park's table over the next 20 minutes, unhurried, natural, stopping to admire a floral arrangement, accepting a second glass of water, exchanging a brief smile with a woman who assumed they had met before. She was nobody. She was background. She was exactly what Guan had told her to be. Then Park looked up, straight at her. She didn't freeze. She let her eyes pass him like he was just part of the room, like her gaze was moving and he happened to be in its path. She looked away in under a second. Good, Guan said in her ear. Her heart was hammering. Park said something to the man beside him. The man nodded and stood. Nadia watched from her peripheral vision as he moved, not toward the bar, not toward another table, toward her. Someone's coming to you, Guan said, tension sharp in his voice now. Stay calm. Let him speak first. The man stopped beside her, young, polished, smile practiced and empty. Mr. Park would like to know if you're enjoying the evening, he said. She smiled, easy, relaxed, like her knees weren't about to give out. It's a beautiful event. Please tell him thank you. The man nodded and left. Guan said nothing for 4 seconds. Then, it means Park doesn't approach strangers, ever. A pause that felt like a held breath. He only reaches out when he already knows something. Nadia kept her face perfectly still. Guan, she barely moved her lips. The man coming back across the room right now, is he coming back to talk? No, Guan's voice dropped. He's coming with Park. She had 3 seconds to decide whether to stay or run. She stayed.
Park smiled like a man who had never done anything wrong in his life. That was the first thing she noticed of close. The second was his eyes, calm, patient, reading her the exact same way Guan did, like people were puzzles and he had all the time in the world to solve them. I don't believe we've met, he said. His English was perfect, unaccented, smooth. I don't think we have, Nadia said. He extended his hand. She shook it. His grip was gentle, which somehow felt worse than if it had been firm. Park, he said simply. Nadia. He tilted his head slightly, just slightly, like the name meant something he wasn't ready to show yet. Are you enjoying the evening, Nadia? Very much, she said. Beautiful cause. Yes. He glanced around the room briefly, then back to her. Tell me, who brought you tonight? I make it a point to know my guests. Guan's voice came through the earpiece immediately. Tell him a name, first name only, someone generic. A friend, she said smoothly. James. He got pulled into a work call, and I've been fending for myself all evening. Park laughed, genuine sounding, warm. Poor James, he gestured toward the tables. Would you like to sit? No reason to stand at the edge of the room all night. That's very kind, she said. Guan's voice was low and tight in her ear. Don't sit at his table. Redirect. I was actually about to find my seat. She lifted her glass slightly. But thank you. Park nodded slowly. His smile stayed. His eyes didn't. Of course. He clasped his hands in front of him. Enjoy your evening. A pause, just a half-second too long. It's funny, though. She stopped. You remind me of someone connected to a mutual acquaintance of ours. His head tilted again, that same small movement. Do you know a man named Guan? The room kept moving around her. The string quartet kept playing. Waiters kept drifting past with trays. Everything continued, like the floor hadn't just dropped out from under her. She let one beat pass, one full, controlled beat. Then she smiled, confused, polite, slightly apologetic. I'm sorry, I don't think so. Is he here tonight? Park studied her face. She held the smile, and held his gaze, and held every single muscle in her body completely still. No, he said finally. He's not the type for events like this. His smile returned, easy and warm and terrifying. Enjoy your evening, Nadia. He turned and walked back to his table. Nadia moved toward the far hallway, unhurried, steady, right up until she turned the corner. Then her back hit the wall, and she pressed both hands flat against it, just to feel something solid. Guan's voice came through, quiet, urgent, shaken in a way she had never heard him before. He knows, he said. Get out now.
The exit was blocked. Not obviously. No one was standing with arms crossed or hands raised, just two men in dark suits who hadn't been near the hallway door 20 minutes ago and were there now, talking to each other, relaxed, positioned perfectly between Nadia and the way out. Park had moved fast. Guan, she kept her voice barely above a breath, the exit by the hallway, two men. I see them. His voice was controlled, but she could hear the machinery behind it, rapid thinking, recalculating. Don't stop walking. Turn left at the end of the corridor. There's a service entrance past the kitchen. She turned left. The corridor was narrower here, quieter, the sounds of the event muffled behind her. Her heels were too loud on the hard floor. She slowed her pace just enough to soften each step, moving like she belonged, like she was simply looking for the restroom and had taken one wrong turn. Nadia, Guan again. There's a man behind you, 30 feet. He picked you up at the corridor entrance. She didn't look back. How far is the service entrance? 60 feet, past the double doors on your right. 50 feet of empty corridor, with one man behind her and two blocking the front, and Park sitting back at his table smiling at whoever was next to him like he hadn't just quietly closed every door in the building around her. She pushed through the double doors. Kitchen. Loud, hot, bright. Cooks moving fast, steam rising, metal trays clanging. Nobody looked up. She was just another person who had taken a wrong turn at a party. She kept walking straight through. Good, Guan said. The service door is on your left, 30 feet. She found it, pushed the bar handle. Cold air hit her like a wall. A narrow alley, wet pavement, the sound of the city rushing back in. A black car was already there, engine running, a guard she recognized from the penthouse behind the wheel. She got in. The car moved before the door was fully closed. She sat in the back seat and pressed her hands together between her knees to stop them shaking. It didn't work. She gave up trying. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. 4 words. She was very good. She stared at it. Guan, her voice came out strange. Someone just texted me, not your number, unknown. Silence on the line. Read it, he said. She did. Another silence, longer this time. That text, Guan said slowly, came from Park's personal number. A pause that felt like something tearing. Which means he didn't just make you tonight. She waited. He had your cell number before you walked in. The car kept moving through the Manhattan streets, lights blurring past the windows. Nadia stared at those 4 words on her screen. Someone inside the penthouse had given Park everything. and that someone had been there the whole time.
Guan had everyone in the penthouse on their knees within the hour. Not literally, but close enough. Every guard, every staff member, every person who had been inside those walls in the last 72 hours was pulled into the main room and standing in a line when Nadia walked in. 8 people total, all of them still, all of them careful. The kind of careful that comes from knowing exactly what the man pacing in front of them was capable of. Guan wasn't yelling. That was the frightening part. He moved down the line slowly, hands behind his back, stopping in front of each person for just long enough to make them feel the full weight of his attention. No accusations yet, no names, just presence and the unbearable silence that surrounded it. Nadia stood to the side with Min Jae. The boy had been awake when she arrived. He had taken one look at her face when she walked through the door and moved immediately to her side without a word. Now he stood close enough that his shoulder touched her arm, watching his father work the room with the focused, unblinking attention of someone who had grown up studying how power moved. Guan stopped at the 4th person in the line, a younger man, mid-20s. He had been at the penthouse since the beginning, one of the original guards, someone Nadia had seen every day. He had nodded at her in the hallways. He had once held the elevator for her without being asked. Guan looked at him for a long time. The man looked back, steady, controlled. Then Min Jae spoke. "It's him." Everyone turned. The boy's voice had been quiet, but the room was so silent it carried like a shout. He wasn't pointing, he wasn't dramatic. He just said it the way he said everything, direct, certain, like he had known for a while and had been waiting for the right moment. The young guard's composure cracked, just slightly, just enough. Guan saw it. That was all he needed. What happened next took less than 4 minutes. 2 guards moved. Words were exchanged in Korean, low and rapid. The young man was taken from the room through a door Nadia had never seen opened before. Then the room was empty except for the 3 of them. Guan turned to his son. Something passed between them, not words, not quite an expression, something older than both of those things, an understanding between a father and a son who had both survived things that should have broken them. Guan crossed the room and did something Nadia had not seen him do once since she had met him. He put his hand on top of Min Jae's head. Just for a moment, brief and careful, like he was still learning how. The boy closed his eyes. Nadia looked away because the moment felt too private to witness. Her phone buzzed again. Park's number. This time, it wasn't 4 words. It was an address. The address was Min Jae's old school. Shut down. Abandoned. A building on the edge of Queens that had closed 3 years ago and hadn't had a living soul inside it since. Nadia knew this because Guan went pale when he saw it, and she had decided by now that Guan did not go pale easily. He sat down. That was also new. He sat down in the chair by the window and held the phone in both hands and stared at that address like it was something that had reached out of the past and grabbed him by the throat. Min Jae was in the next room. Neither of them spoke until they were certain of that. "That building," Guan said, voice low, "is where they took him." Nadia went still. 2 years ago, when they took Min Jae, he set the phone on the table face down, like he couldn't look at it anymore. They held him in that building for 11 days. The room felt smaller suddenly. The city outside kept moving, indifferent, relentless, but inside that penthouse the air had thickened into something almost solid. "Park is telling you he was there. Guan is telling me he can go back," Guan said. "He's not threatening me. He's reminding me that he already won once." Nadia looked at the phone face down on the table. "Or," she said slowly, "he's trying to pull you out, get you to move on emotion instead of strategy." Guan looked at her. She had surprised him. She could see it, that small recalibration behind his eyes, the slight shift of a man reassessing someone he thought he had already fully assessed. "You don't have a background in this world," he said. "No," she agreed, but I grew up with nothing in a neighborhood where people used fear the same way Park does. You make someone feel the worst thing that ever happened to them, and then you wait for them to do something stupid." Silence. Then Guan picked the phone back up, looked at the address again, set it down. "What would you do?" he asked. The question landed strange. A man like Guan asking a woman like Nadia what she would do. 3 weeks ago, she had been carrying groceries alone in the snow. "I'd send him something back. Something that tells him you're not moving, that you're not scared, that his reminder didn't work." Guan thought for a moment. Then he almost smiled. He picked up his own phone, not the one Park had texted, and typed something short. 20 seconds. He set it down. "What did you send?" he asked. "A paper crane, a photo of one." She stared at him. "Min Jae's mother used to send one to every person who underestimated her," he said quietly. Park knew what it meant. His phone buzzed immediately. Park had responded, and the response was a name that made Guan stand up so fast his chair scraped the floor.
The name Park sent was Guan's brother. Nadia didn't know that at first. She just saw the name, Hanso, and watched Guan's entire body change. Not dramatically, not the way people collapse in movies, just a slow, terrible stillness that started in his shoulders and moved downward until he was standing like something that had been turned off. She waited. "Your brother?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. He walked to the window, stood there with his back to her, both hands flat on the glass, looking down at the city like the answer might be written somewhere in the streets below. "Hanso has been in Seoul for 4 years, running operations there, separate from everything here." A pause. "I trusted him completely." The past tense landed heavy. Nadia said Park is saying Hanso is connected to all of this. Carefully. Not a question. "Park is saying Hanso is the reason all of this started." Guan turned from the window. His face was composed, but his eyes were doing something she had no name for. "My wife, Min Jae, the informant in my own team." He stopped. "Park is saying my brother built the blueprint and handed it over." The room was absolutely silent. Nadia thought about the folder on the table from Chapter 9, the photograph of Min Jae's mother laughing in Central Park, the medical report made to look like an accident. She thought about an 11-day-old, 6-year-old boy escaping alone. She thought about every layer of this thing and how deep it went. Why would his own brother, she started. "Power," Guan said simply. "Hanso is older. In our world, older should mean first, but our father chose me." He said it without self-pity, without drama, just a plain fact delivered plainly. Hanso never said a word about it, not once, for 20 years. And then he didn't have to say a word, he just acted. Guan looked at her. "Through Park," Nadia continued, "if Park takes you down, Hanso steps in, comes back from Seoul as the one who holds it together. Nobody questions it. Nobody suspects the grieving brother." The silence that followed was different from the others, heavier, the kind that comes after something true has been said out loud for the first time. Min Jae appeared in the doorway. Neither adult had heard him come. He stood there in his socks, paper crane in hand, looking at his father. And Nadia understood from the expression on the boy's face that he had been standing there long enough to hear. He already knew. "I heard them talking," Min Jae said quietly, "when they held me. They used a name." He looked at Guan. "I didn't know what it meant then." His voice didn't shake. "I do now." Guan crossed the room in 4 steps and pulled his son against his chest so fast and so hard that the paper crane fell from Min Jae's hand, and neither of them reached for it. Nadia did. She picked it up off the floor and held it and said nothing. Her phone lit up. Hanso was calling. Guan took the phone from her hand and answered it. No hesitation, No signal to Nadia, no preparation. He just took it, accepted the call, and put it on speaker like he wanted witnesses. "Brother," Hanso's voice came through warm and easy, carrying the specific comfort of someone who had rehearsed casual for a long time. "I heard there's been some trouble in New York." Guan said nothing. The silence on the line stretched for 5 full seconds. Hanso filled it. "I've been worried. I wanted to call sooner, but you know how Seoul gets this time of—" "Park sent me your name," Guan said. The warmth on the other end didn't disappear. It just thinned, like a light being turned down 1 notch at a time. "Park." Hanso repeated it like he was tasting it. "You're taking Park's word over your own blood." "I'm not taking anyone's word," Guan said. "Min Jae heard your name 2 years ago in that building in Queens." Complete silence now. Not the silence of someone thinking, the silence of someone who has just watched the last door close. "He was 6 years old," Guan said quietly, "and he remembered your name." Min Jae was standing straight, both hands at his sides, eyes fixed on the phone on the table. He didn't move, he didn't blink. A child who had carried a secret in his body for 2 years without knowing what it was or what to do with it, finally watching it land where it belonged. Hanso spoke again. The warmth was completely gone now. "You were always Father's favorite. Flat, old, like something that had been sitting in a drawer for 20 years waiting to be said. Every decision, every opportunity, every piece of respect in that room went to you. I built just as much. I sacrificed just as much." "You took my wife," Guan said. The words came out quiet, controlled, but underneath them was something vast and barely contained, the way water looks calm above a current that could pull a man under in seconds. "You took my son," Guan continued. 11 days. He was 6. I needed leverage. He was 6 years old, Hanso." The line went silent again. Nadia realized she hadn't breathed in almost a minute. She breathed now, slow and careful, watching Guan stand over that phone like a man dismantling something that had been destroying him from the inside for 2 years. "It's over," Guan said. "Whatever you built with Park, whatever comes next, it's done." Hanso laughed, short, bitter. "You think 1 phone call ends this?" "No," Guan said. "I think the 12 men currently outside your building in Seoul end this." A sharp intake of breath on the line. "I've known for 72 hours. I just needed my son to say the name out loud." The call dropped. Min Jae looked up at his father. And then from somewhere below, the lobby, an alarm started screaming.
Park was in the lobby. Not his men, not a proxy. Park himself, in a gray coat, standing at the front desk of the building like he had simply come to visit, like he was someone's expected guest who had arrived slightly early and didn't mind waiting. The alarm had been his entrance signal. Guan's head guard appeared in the doorway. "He came alone," he said. "Or appears to." "Appears to," Guan repeated. He looked at Nadia. Something passed between them. Not a plan exactly, more like a shared understanding that the next 10 minutes would determine everything, and there was no more time to prepare for it. "Take Min Jae to the back room," Guan said. "No," Min Jae's voice, firm, immediate. Both adults turned. The boy stood in the center of the room, feet planted, chin level, not performing bravery, just decided, the way he had been decided about everything since the moment Nadia had found him on that stoop in the snow, like a child who had run out of the luxury of being unsure. "He came because of me," Min Jae said. "I'm not going to a back room." Guan stared at his son for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Park arrived on the floor 90 seconds later, escorted by 2 guards who he walked between like they were simply showing him the way, rather than controlling his movement. He stepped into the penthouse and looked around slowly, taking inventory the way he always did, calm, unhurried, reading the room. His eyes landed on Nadia first. He smiled. "You did very well that night," he said. "Genuinely. Most people would have broken in that hallway." She said nothing. His eyes moved to Minjae. The smile stayed, but something behind it shifted, a complexity she couldn't fully read. Not guilt exactly, something older and more complicated than guilt. "You've grown," Park said to the boy. Minjae looked at him the way a child looks at something that once had power over them and no longer does. Steady, clear. "You should sit," Guan said to Park. "I didn't come to sit." Park clasped his hands in front of him. "I came because Hanseo is finished, and we both know it, which means the arrangement we had is finished." He looked at Guan. "And I want to discuss what comes next before you decide for both of us." "There is no both of us," Guan said. "There could be." Park glanced at Nadia, then back. "She changed something in you. I could see it the moment I looked at your son's face tonight." He paused. "A woman who saves a child for nothing in return. No angle, no agenda." He tilted his head. "That is either the most dangerous person in this room or the most valuable one." Silence. Then Minjae walked forward, past Guan, past Nadia, until he was standing directly in front of Park. He held out a paper crane. Nobody moved. Park looked down at it, and for the first time all evening his composure cracked, just slightly, just at the edges, and what came through looked almost unbearably like grief. He reached for it. Park took the crane. And then he did something nobody in that room expected. He sat down. Not controlled and deliberate the way he did everything else. He just sat. Like the weight of what was in his hand had transferred directly into his legs, and they stopped working the way they were supposed to. He looked at the crane for a long time. "She used to make these," he said quietly. Nadia watched his face. The architecture of it had changed completely. The careful arrangement of warmth and control that he wore like a suit had come apart, and underneath it was just an old man holding a piece of folded paper like it was the most important thing he had ever touched. "Who?" Guan asked. His voice was careful. Park looked up. "Your wife." A pause. "Before she was yours. We grew up on the same street in Incheon. She was 15. She used to make cranes for every kid in the neighborhood who was having a hard time." He looked back down at the one in his hand. "She made one for me when my mother died." The room was absolutely still. "I didn't order her death," Park said. "I want you to know that. Hanso told me she was already gone before I understood what he had done." His jaw tightened. "I have been using her death for leverage because it was useful. That is the most honest and the most shameful thing I will ever say out loud." Guan stood completely motionless. Minjae had not moved either. He was watching Park with those dark, careful eyes, reading him the way he read every room, every person, every situation, looking for the truth underneath the surface. Then the boy spoke. "My mom said cranes are for people who need someone to believe in them. She gave you one. That means she believed in you, even back then." Something broke open in Park's face. Not dramatically, just opened, like a window in a room that had been sealed for years, and the air that came through was cold and real and necessary. He set the crane on the table in front of him. "I will give you Hanso completely," he said to Guan. "Everything. Every location, every account, every move he made over 4 years." He straightened. "In exchange for one thing." "What?" Guan asked. Park looked at Nadia. "I want to know her name," he said. "Her full name. So that when this is over and I am somewhere quieter than this city, He glanced at the crane one last time. I can remember that the thing that ended all of this was a woman who stopped for a child in the snow. Nadia looked at him for a long moment. Nadia, she said. Nadia Williams. Park nodded slowly, stood, buttoned his coat. He walked to the elevator without another word. The doors closed. Guan turned to Nadia. His eyes held something she had never seen in them across all these weeks, unguarded, open, human. "It's over," he said. She looked at Min Jae beside her. Paper cranes lined on every surface around them. The city glittering 40 floors below, the first pale light of a new morning pressing against the glass. "No," she said softly. She took the boy's hand. "It's just beginning." If this story moved you, share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Also, don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.